Well, welcome back to the podcast. I am super excited today to have back with us our repeat guest, Dr. Kathleen McNamara, who is a colleague. I'm proud to say, as a colleague, that is an honor for me, who works with me on very hard cases throughout Colorado and is a psychologist, long history in family law and in the family domestic courts arena. And we are here today to talk about adverse childhood experiences. So, welcome back, Dr. McNamara.
Thank you, Krista. Pleasure to be here.
I have multiple times now, because we can't really get away from this topic in family law when we're dealing with these really challenging cases, that these kids and often their parents have gone through a multitude of experiences that we would say, and studies have shown, impact them in the adverse experiences impact them long term in a lot of really serious ways, divorce being one of those among many. And so I thought it was just time to get somebody like you to come in and really explain this from a higher level psychology point of view, and not just throw it around so that parents and attorneys and mental health professionals can really get a grip on how important this topic is. So I know we only have an hour. I know we could talk about it for months because there's so much to it, but why don't you just give us like an overall introduction of what are the ACEs and kind of what's the initial study that kicked this off?
Sure.
Give us a little introduction.
Sure. So ACEs is an acronym for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And this term comes from a study that was conducted back in the 90s, the late 90s, 1997. It was a Kaiser Permanente study. It consisted of about 17,000 subjects who were volunteers, who were actually part of like a weight loss study. It was something completely different. But they asked these individuals a number of questions about their life experiences, their childhood experiences. These were middle class people with health insurance. Um, since that study was conducted, there have been literally hundreds of studies related to ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences, which have essentially replicated the original study. So we talk about the original study, but there are many current and recent studies that are basically informing us of the same thing. And the finding of the study, the original ACE study asked people 10 questions, just 10 questions about their childhood experiences. And these questions had to do with child abuse, child neglect, um, dysfunction in the home, and in family relationships, substance use, whether people had been victims of violence and things like that. 10 questions about. One of the questions was if they were a child of divorce. That was one of the questions of the 10 questions. So only 10 questions in that original study. And that study found that 11% of the people who answered the survey endorsed that they had been emotionally abused in childhood. 30% indicated they had been physically abused in childhood. Almost 20% endorsed that they had been sexually abused in some way. Almost 24%, 23.5% were exposed to alcohol abuse in their homes. Almost 19% were exposed to mental illness in their homes. And 12.5% had been exposed to the battering of a mother. So these were very significant findings. Those are large percentages of people endorsing things that we consider to be, oh, it happens, but it doesn't happen that often. It actually happens more often than we think.
What insight can you give us about what we see in those kinds of situations with, any tendencies of anything about school shooters themselves or the dynamics of ACEs in that
Well,
community violence?
community violence, including school shootings, in addition to family violence, things that are happening in the home. These are obviously highly traumatic experiences. And we're seeing more and more of this. In Colorado, the leading cause of death for children between the ages of 10 and 14 is suicide. Um, it's unclear exactly why that is. Is it related to the availability of firearms? The whole lots of people have different opinions about the availability of firearms, but guns are a huge risk factor, and they're very available for the use of violence against others and for suicidal intent. It's clearly a traumatic experience. It's not one of the original ACE studies, but it's certainly one that uh, everyone is looking at and considering. Um, as school shootings have become more prevalent, uh, there is more information coming out about what can we say about people who commit these kinds of crimes. I'm not an expert on that, but I will say from my reading that very commonly these young people are children of divorce and who have had childhood adverse experiences of various kinds, including divorce. Often they were raised in single parent homes. Um, and so, I mean, not that that's necessarily, I mean, lots of kids are raised in single parent homes who don't
Yeah.
grow up to be, violent people. So we want to really be careful about what we're saying here. But we want to also be appreciative of the fact that we want to be intervening early when there are these cumulative childhood experiences so that we can promote healthy functioning and resiliency and avoid these worst kinds of outcomes.
How would you describe sort of the importance of the family in a person's life or in society, just sort of as a bedrock to
Well, it is a bedrock. I mean, I think that's a good word. It's sort of the bedrock of our nation, of our society. It's the bedrock of our communities. Families can be defined different ways, but it's the heart. It's sort of the heart of our society. And I think as a general statement, people thrive in the protection of their families, and we hold that very dear. That we want to support the ability of parents and families to provide that protective mechanism for children. Um, and all that we know about healthy family functioning is good for our communities, for our societies, for the safety of everyone, not just the safety of people within an individual family unit, but healthy families and healthy children creates healthy societies. And so this matters to everyone. This matters to everyone how families function. We should all be worried about families that aren't functioning well because those are the families that interrelate to us and interrelate with our children and, increase or decrease our safety in our community. So I do think that thinking about the interconnection of children and families and each other broadly is an important part of this conversation. I do think psychoeducation is sort of one whole kind of bucket of level of intervention. Getting educated is is the key to so many solutions. Getting parents educated and getting the helpers who are helping them get educated. I think we need to do a better job of getting professionals educated about really many things that we deal with these families within the legal system, within the mental health system, within the community system. So there's psychoeducation. And then there is this whole there are legal interventions that sometimes are necessary. Legal interventions are all of the things that the court system can do to protect children and to protect parents and to ensure that their needs get met, like the appointment of a child's legal representative might be the best intervention here of all because they don't have money for the PRE and they don't have money for anything. And at least a CLR can go in, take a look at the whole thing and start sort of doing that triage of what interventions here are realistic for this family and you can think creatively, and you can think simply and complexly. So legal interventions are a whole host of different things that can happen in the legal arena. And then there are mental health interventions. So these would be all of the things from simple individual psychotherapy for children or adults to family therapy, which can be quite complex and it might involve teams of professionals. It might be an integrated model where you have individual therapists and family therapists who are working with different combinations of family members, who's working on the family relationships in addition to the internal dynamics. So I would say education, legal interventions, mental health interventions are kind of the big three buckets.